Continuing this series' expanded look at what the Age of the Ring mod provides in its factions, both those original to AOTR and expanded ones from vanilla ROTWK, it's worth noting up front again that these videos are not guides, merely faction highlights so you can see at a glance what some of the more interesting changes are, or all new features are. Needless to say, this is not an exhaustive demonstration or compendium of changes. Something important to note up front, though. In this series, sometimes you'll see oddities like abilities and powers instantly refreshing, or resource structures that produce insanely high resources. This is just a product of the mod's testing mode, which lets you change these values in-game for testing purposes, or demonstration purposes as in this series. So these changes should not be seen as accurately representing the mod and how it actually plays. Rivendell is an exciting faction to play in Age of the Ring. To be honest, it feels like the faction that has the most fanboy love in it, which is saying something. In other words, there are so many things from the books thrown into the mix with impeccable balance, it's hard to know where to start. Rivendell is another one of the 3 Elven factions to come out of the overhaul to the vanilla game's singular faction of the Elves, the vanilla version being covered in more detail in the previous episode in this series, as well as the Woodland Realm faction in Age of the Ring. Like with that faction, Rivendell has its own identity, being its own fully fledged faction and appropriately has a very different playstyle. Much like the Woodland Realm faction, Rivendell is not comprised of only the Elves of the last homely house, known as the High Elves or Noldor, a small fraction of those who once came from west over sea in ages past. Instead, Rivendell also includes units from the lands of Eriador, such as the wandering Dunedain Rangers, kinsfolk of Aragorn who protect the wide area. The faction also includes men of Bree and even Hobbits. Whereas Vanilla's faction of the Elves is, well, only Elves, but from not just Rivendell, but also Lothlorien, the Grey Havens, and even the otherwise quiet country around the Grey Havens known as Lindon. Well, as always, let's take a moment to appreciate the art overhauls. Vanilla structure art combines both Rivendell and Lothlorien architecture and motifs in some interesting ways to make a pretty nice blend. The Leaves of Lorien motif is an especially nice touch. The Elven Barracks is your main unit structure in Vanilla. Vanilla's Stables has been removed from AOTR's Rivendell, though you can get 2 kinds of cavalry from 2 other structures. The Mirror of Galadriel is the well for this faction. The structure is moved to Lothlorien and AOTR and completely overhauled to have a different function entirely. And the Malorn resource structure has appropriately been moved to Lothlorien. As is typical in vanilla, faces are almost always the same, and armor upgrades are usually just a gold paint added to pre-existing armor. In Age of the Ring, the fortress is appropriately very much of Rivendell design now. The fortress now has the great addition of the White Council Observatory from the Hobbit films, offering some great powers. The Dunedain gathering recruits the Rangers of the North, capturing the feel of the Rangers in the wild camping amidst ruins. The Elven dormitory recruits only the High Elves of Rivendell, last of the Noldor, many of whom fought in the wars of the Last Alliance millennia before. The well is now Celebrion's well, and the likeness of Elrond's wife Celebrion. The arrow tower is now much taller and more graceful. No longer is the heroic statue a bland, nameless warrior, but of the last High King of the Elves, Gil-galad himself. The Bree-land encampment recruits your Hobbits and Bree-landers, showing them to be on the move in tents and caravans. And Rivendell would be incomplete without the library. You can espy the legendary Mr. Bilbo Baggins himself hanging around there. And the orchard replaces the Malorn tree as the primary resource structure. In vanilla, all units carry the same banner. In AOTR, Hobbits get sheriffs instead of banner carriers, a nice nod to the books, and the Bree-landers get a Dunedain captain, presumably who inspire them to fight the Shadow in their lands. And the Rangers get their own captains. So it's not until the Elves that you actually get to see the banners. But let's get to the main stuff. Playstyles are quite different between games. Vanilla is straightforward, having just the Elven barracks and stables, Lorien troops being the base swordsmen and archers, Greyhaven's troops being your base spears, and Mirkwood archers your tier 2 archers, covered in the previous episode. And your base cavalry are Rivendell lancers, while your tier 2 cavalry are the horse archers of Lindon. We'll save the Lorien troops for the next episode. Looking at just the Greyhavens and Rivendell troops though, the basic Greyhaven spearmen have the typical porcupine formation, but nothing else, and while the other units don't have special abilities either, the horse archers of Lindon are incredibly nimble and of high value, but are only capable of ranged attacks, though strong against melee cavalry. All Greyhavens and Lindon troops are removed from AOTR's Rivendell, which is only one representation of the Greyhavens, as you'll see later. Likewise, the Ents will be reserved for the Lothlorien overhaul. These are replaced with a unique siege unit, covered later. Getting to the more complex playstyle of AOTR's Rivendell, an easy way to think of this faction in terms of gameplay is having Hobbits as early game spam units, Dunedain Rangers for the mid game, and the High Elves as very powerful late game units. In Age of the Ring, the basic unit structure is your Bree-land encampment, which recruits your spam Hobbit swordsmen and 2 archers, along with battering rams and 2 minor heroes covered later. Also has a fun feature, just because. The Hobbit Bounders only have the ability to swap between melee and rock throwing mode, but are fast spam troops which can also stealth in trees but do not get a horde bonus. The rocks are useful primarily against single targets like heroes. Bunch up these guys and buff them with leaderships and other modifiers for dramatic effect. And the 2 archers are your basic archers which don't have any special abilities at all, along with the rams. However, that you can make rams from just your basic troop structure instead of having to invest in a second structure like many other factions means you can rush these things quite fast. And the Bree-landers, brave men from Bree and surrounding lands, have the typical porcupine formation of most early game spearmen, but like Gondor's fiefdom troops get heavy armor at level 3. Really cool Arnorian armor retrieved from the Barrow Downs, the only basic troops of this faction to get heavy armor. The Dunedain Gathering recruits your rangers and their cavalry and 2 other minor heroes covered later. It also recruits an all-new heroic unit, also covered later, and a very exciting one at that. The ground troops are unique in that they provide leadership to surrounding hobbits, and while they start off as archers, they can choose between spear or sword on the fly, though such a change is permanent. They can also become invisible immediately on the spot for very quick getaways. The Dunedain Outriders, an amazing bit of cavalry befitting the Dunedain, get massive crush deceleration with their wedge formation. But more impressive, they can stealth on the spot, anywhere, in addition to normal passive stealth in trees. This instant stealthing can make for devastating ambushes and impressive getaways. The Elven Dormitory houses the rather expensive late-game Elven units of Rivendell, from the Swordmasters to Glavesmen, archers to Rivendell Knights, and the overhauled Noldor Warriors, now called Veterans of the Last Alliance. The Rivendell Guardsmen are some of the deadliest swords in the game, appropriate for warriors of the Noldor. They get a strong damage buff, perfect for engaging with key targets. The Rivendell Glavesmen, the powerful Noldoran spearmen, get a strong armor buff which stacks with their shield wall formation, helping them to tank damage in key moments, complementing the damage buff of the Guardsmen. They also have a great marching animation for their shield wall formation. The Rivendell archers, some of the most powerful in the whole game and are to be greatly feared, have some of the fastest attack speeds in the game and can increase their firing range and vision radius, rare modifiers that can stack for incredible range. And the Tier 3 Rivendell Knights are appropriately some of the most formidable cavalry in the game. They can switch between glaive and bow and have great trample deceleration. You can see more on this mechanic in the Gondor episode. At last, there are the Noldor Warriors, some of the toughest heroic units in vanilla. Age of the Ring, they have been quite thoroughly expanded upon to be even more powerful than their vanilla counterparts. The Noldor warriors of vanilla can obviously hold themselves against hordes. In Age of the Ring, going up against the Tier 3 Morgul orcs with the Siege of Eregion armor buff ability, they do pretty well. But they have the option to do even better with the Fall of Angmar ability and its attack speed increase, preserving both battalions. While Vanilla's warriors get a massive armor and damage buff to protect against Mordor's elite Haradrim archers' barbed arrows, the attack speed of the Noldor is simply too slow to compare with the Haradrim, and the enemy eventually gets the better of them. In Age of the Ring, the result is about the same with the Siege of Eregion ability when up against the incredibly dangerous Tier 2 Easterling archers. Again, the attack speed of the Easterlings is something to contend with. Luckily, the veterans' Fall of Angmar ability helps them to turn the tables and give them a taste of their own medicine. By themselves, even with their special range buff ability to get first blood, the Elven archers can't stand toe-to-toe with this many Easterling archers. But the veterans' War of the Last Alliance ability buffs out their damage, a great ability which lends them even more flexibility and versatility than their vanilla counterpart. Even with the buff, with swords, the Noldor stand no chance against a fully armed fortress. However, they do have substantial range with their arrows, so it doesn't take too long to take out one of their towers. Obviously not the best choice in the heat of the moment, though. Whereas in Age of the Ring, this is completely different. Consequently, they are also harder to acquire, and instead of being able to get 3 battalions, you can only get 2. This might sound disappointing on the surface, but there's a good reason for it. Because now there is an all-new heroic unit no less powerful, the Grey Company. This is easily one of the most exciting inclusions in the whole game for devotees of the books. Taken from the scene in The Return of the King when the Dunedain Rangers come down from the north to aid Aragorn in the War of the Ring, the Grey Company offers a great deal of versatility, much like the veterans of the Last Alliance. What's more is, they can target an enemy hero or unit with a special ability which lets you track that unit anywhere on the map for a brief time in addition to debuffing them. This ability is also an incredible way of telling the story of how these guys are the best of the Dunedain Rangers, and a great feature is how they can buff various heroes like even Aragorn. Yet another part of the aforementioned overhaul not found in vanilla, that of being able to buff various heroes with special units. Typically it's the other way around with heroes, but not when it comes to the epic Grey Company, so they are a vital part of a Rivendell hero strategy. A bit more on them later. This is all part of how the Rivendell faction has some of the strongest late game units in the mod. This includes its late game hero roster in Aragorn, Glorfindel, and Elrond. Aragorn is here presented as his Strider version, and so complements a Dunedain strategy with his buffs for them. But he's an interesting hero killer in his own versatility to switch between bow and sword, keeping heroes from trying to escape melee brawls. With his sword, eventually being able to upgrade to Andúril like in BFME 1, he is a potent hero killer indeed. But even with his bow, he has an ability uniquely reflecting his ranger status, greatly increased vision and attack range. This gets even more fun by the inclusion of another great character only from the books, Halbarad, who is a great captain of the Dunedain Rangers of the North. Also able to switch between bow and melee to fit right into a Grey Company, Dunedain, and Aragorn strategy, Halbarad's abilities let you quickly muster rangers onto the field, summon more of the Grey Company to protect him, and more. As such, Halbarad can readily be combined with the Grey Company and Aragorn for a fearsome ranged or melee party all on their own. Because of the massive vision radius increase, they can get the drop on enemy heroes, letting the Grey Company get sights on a key target to slow it way down, and adding considerably more damage from them and the Grey Company units summoned by Halbarad. And depending on their distance, other units nearby may not see them to auto-attack or be commanded to flee before it's too late. But most interesting of all, he carries the Banner of Arwen. Taken from a great scene in the books, after Arwen crafts an ancient standard or banner for Aragorn in order to foster hope in men, Halbarad and a group of rangers, the Grey Company, are sent by the Lady Galadriel herself to Aragorn after the Battle of Helm's Deep. They delivered the banner with a message from Elrond urging him to take the paths of the dead, coupled with another from Arwen encouraging him to restore hope, partly by means of the banner. Aragorn then led the Grey Company, accompanied by Gimli and Legolas, to the place the Oathbreakers made their oath of alliance to Isildur in ancient times, at the Stone of Erech, where it is finally unfurled. Thus was revealed upon the banner something not seen in an age, the device of High King Elendil himself, father of Isildur and High King of both Arnor and Gondor, a device heralding the restoration of Arnor and Gondor and their reunification, a sign all would understand that the true king had returned.
Fight for me, and I will hold your oaths fulfilled.
Under this sign the dead men renewed their ancient oath to fight against the Dark Lord. Aragorn then led them and his company to take the ships at the otherwise impenetrable port city and fortress of Pelargir. Having fulfilled their oaths, the Shades departed forever. The banner was then placed upon the prow of Aragorn's ship as he led the Gondorians up the great river to the aid of Minas Tirith, blown by a western wind. Billowing in these winds as they dispersed the dark clouds sent by Sauron from Mordor to blot out the sun, the banner shone bright in the morning light for all upon the battlefield to see. It was an unlooked-for sign of hope to the men of the West, but of great fear to the enemy. The men of Gondor and the Rohirrim, upon seeing the banner, had renewed hope in their darkest hour and rallied to their long-hoped-for king, utterly defeating the host of Mordor. The banner shone as a beacon over the defiant last stand of the army of the West before the Black Gate of Mordor and the final downfall of the Lord of the Rings. The Banner of Arwen in Age of the Ring is appropriately a game-changing ability with a mighty damage buff and XP boost to surrounding heroes to level them up fast. Not something you want to pass up in your Rivendell strategies. Watch as the level 1 heroes Gildor and Glorfindel level up and the Dunedain continue to replenish fallen soldiers, all with record speed due to the Banner of Arwen. When all is said and done, the army is mostly intact, and the heroes are already level 5, maxing out Gildor's abilities and unlocking some of Glorfindel's rather powerful ones. Protect that banner! As for Glorfindel, his role is now a late-game hero compared to his mid-game nature in Vanilla. Having several of the same abilities as Vanilla, in AOTR he has an expanded role as leader of the Knights of Rivendell, a new late-game melee cavalry unit. He is a much more formidable hero killer in AOTR though. Not only can his melee damage be massively buffed like in Vanilla, but he can also pin enemy heroes down for a brief time. Reflecting a powerful scene found only in the books in which Glorfindel, not Arwen, comes to the rescue of Strider and the Hobbits, Glorfindel is now shown to be the ultimate arch-nemesis of the Nazgul. But let's compare to Vanilla ROTWK. Looking at Vanilla Elves' hero roster, as in the last episode, we see Glorfindel as a mid-game hero. He has some similar abilities to AOTR's version, but with dramatically different results. Right away, a key difference is he cannot use his Blade of Purity while mounted, making him much more vulnerable. It doesn't take much to notice his mid-game nature here compared to the far greater power as a late-game hero he has in the Age of the Ring. And as for his most powerful ability, Starlight, how does he stack up against an army he can stun? It's important to note the stun here lasts for 7 seconds, which is about half the time his equivalent power lasts in Age of the Ring, as you'll see in a second. And you'll also notice that his Wind Rider power is fully refreshed by Elrond, while the Starlight power has only a partial cooldown. Naturally, ideally you'd want troops around for a follow-up, but 7 seconds isn't that much time all the same, though enough time for your army to do some real damage with its buff. Compared to AOTR, his cost reflecting late game status. In AOTR, his all-new level 10 stun ability can make whole armies completely vulnerable, which can be fully refreshed by Elrond for a devastating double stun. This is great for when you have your archers nearby to pick off the army while they remain helpless, and of course invaluable when you need to get your own army or heroes away from danger. And of course when you want to reveal those enemy heroes otherwise difficult to target within the army. As for Elrond, he is a very different kind of hero in Age of the Ring compared to his vanilla version. In both games, Elrond starts with a good leadership, but in vanilla he has an amplified version of Farsight, which is partly switched over to a different spellbook power altogether in AOTR. He can also heal quite a bit on his own. Most devastating of all, though, is his Tornado. A little OP in many respects, and not really something which fits with the character. So how does his AOTR version stack up? Well, gone is his offensive capability with the Tornado, which is switched to a spellbook power in AOTR, replaced by abilities more reflecting his nature as wise lore master, and bearer of one of the 3 rings of power, being more of a defensive role, though wielding great power against enemy heroes regardless. And he packs a powerful leadership to boot. The Ring of Air is a great way of reflecting the subtle but mighty power inherent in that ring, knocking enemies down periodically while debuffing them and granting them a hefty 75% armor increase for units. Even with the Nazgul debuffing the troops, they're barely impacted in this fight against Tier 3 Morgul orcs with weapons upgrades. And as mentioned earlier, there is a version of his Tornado ability as a 10 PP power. It lasts a very short time and is immobile, so is more of a stun power in some ways, especially against more powerful units, but can be devastating against weaker clump troops. Vanilla's Farsight power is a humble one that can pack a punch if timed right for the range increase alone, especially when using the Tier 2 Mirkwood archers, which were covered in more detail in the previous episode. In Age of the Ring, this power now reveals the Fog of War, but increases speed instead. And the attack range increase has been given over to another spellbook power, Gandalf the Grey himself. This is a more impactful ability here, in part because it's a higher attack range buff than in Vanilla, but also because it stacks with such a buff the Elven archers give themselves. Great for sniping from afar and keeping enemy units from escaping. Gandalf is a powerful temporary summon, able to heal your troops with his cart, slam enemies with his dragon fireworks, do the classic lightning blast from the vanilla games, and blast back enemies in a wide radius, stunning them in the process.
The enemy is at hand!
Would be wise to follow.
I will guard you!
Keep your swords to hand.
I will burn your fell hides! To the abyss! Your end has come!
The early game is also very interesting with this faction, possessing a lot of synergy between the Hobbits, the Dunedain, the Grey Company, and a few exciting heroes added from the books. Gildor and Glorion, who the Hobbits meet early on in their journey out of the Shire, and the brothers Eladon and Elrohir, the sons of Elrond, who come south along with the Grey Company to the aid of Aragorn. As such, like Aragorn and Halbarad, they are also buffed by the Grey Company, making for a pretty devastating little party when combined with them. And the Grey Company can add temporary buffs to those early to mid-game units to cap it off for a very strong early game push. Aside from the synergy, Gildor, again an early game hero, supports the Hobbits and Bree-landers for great rushes. He can summon Elves of the Wandering Companies to provide light support and fear resistance, like in the books, and he has a fear ability to save your troops.
I am not alone. Come, my companions.
Stay on guard!
Eladon and Elro here, due to their synergy with Hobbits, Bree-landers, and Elves alike, are an excellent duo for all stages of a game. Having synergy with one another also means the enemy pays a heavier price should one die. Eladon is also a great hero killer in his own right, whereas with Elra here he can quickly dispatch heroes and units by increasing his attack speed. They also possess a unique kind of synergy when it comes to orcs, based off their hatred of orcs due to their mother's torment at their hands. Eladon slows them down while Elra here debuffs their armor, all while they deal a hefty 33% extra damage to all orcs. A fun duo to use. And Arwen and Domiel herself is a very different hero in Age of the Ring. She has a devastating anti-unit power in vanilla, but otherwise is the healer of the faction. While an early game hero like in vanilla, she is now strictly a support role, not even able to do damage. One aspect of this is being able to stealth your units and heroes whilst passively granting them a massive experience boost, letting your heroes level up faster than your enemies. She can also buff nearby heroes and units' armor considerably while debuffing the enemies, so not a hero to pass up, very high value for an early game hero. By the way, it's worth noting that Fatty Bolger and Farmer Maggot play roles in the faction. Minor characters from the books, Old Fatty spams Hobbits, while the fan favorite Farmer Maggot can add to Rivendell's economy with his farm. Nice touches from the books.
Fresh mushrooms, locally grown.
Moving on from the heroes, Rivendell's siege is quite unique, not beholden to siege machines or creatures like the other factions. Instead, the faction's main siege is revelers. Minstrels in the House of Elrond to soothe the weary soul, they reflect this important aspect of the mythos and their abilities to wield unusual but powerful magic both in an offensive capacity and in defense of your base. They have the longest range of any siege unit in the game and are notoriously difficult to target or find within an army surrounding and protecting them. And because they are elves, they can also keep up with your army far easier than, say, siege machines can. And they debuff structures, allowing for massive damage to enemy bases. Their siege prowess is made even more powerful by a permanent summonable structure in your spellbook, the Hall of Fire, a magical defensive structure revolving around the magic of storytelling, an important aspect of the Elves of Rivendell from the books. This structure demonstrates the unusual elven magic inherent in the last homely house and how it can summon fearsome visions of various great heroes from the past, such as the elf Celebrimbor who forged the Rings of Power, and Turin Turambar himself of the Children of Hurin. The structure is very weak on its own, so the visions are only supplemental protection to be combined with your own troops, but otherwise it buffs armor and XP gain considerably while replenishing fallen troops and decreasing cooldown of revelers' powers. As if all of this weren't enough to complement the revelers, they can also boost your resource production. So you definitely want a Hall of Fire placed in your base somewhere to decrease the cooldown of this power. All of this makes them perhaps the most versatile siege unit in the game, letting you play offensively or defensively as the need of the match calls for. Another structure worth highlighting here is something the faction cannot be without: the library. Limited to one, this is a powerful addition to any Rivendell strategy, as it offers important discounts, economy buffs, unlocks additional heroic units, the Unduriel upgrade, and more. These can be expensive to be sure, but it's a great reason why using the Revelers to boost your economy is so important, showcasing how Rivendell has one of the strongest late games. Let's compare spellbooks. In both games, Tom Bombadil plays a key role, though dramatically different between the games. In vanilla, he's a mid-tier power, so appropriately doesn't do much damage to structures, but is fairly good at wiping out whole clumps of units while buffing your nearby troops if you need it, but can be taken down quickly if you're not careful. Notice the troops' heavy armor keeps them from being wiped out in one shot. So in vanilla, Tom is mostly a good unit disruptor power. He's also not a good power for taking on heroes, at least not late game ones. And as mentioned earlier, he's ineffective at taking on structures. In Age of the Ring, he is completely the opposite of everything in vanilla though. The faction spellbook, just like any of the other factions, reflects the region of Middle-earth it represents, so it should come as no surprise that one of its most powerful spells is Tom Bombadil himself. In Age of the Ring, this is the only opportunity in the game to use the legendary hero-defining Song and Merriment, a far cry from vanilla in which Tom is available to several factions as a mid-tier power. An important figure from the books, Tom Bombadil guided the Hobbits through the legendary Old Forest as they made their way to Bree, saving them from perils along the way, such as Old Man Willow, one of the oldest and most dangerous trees that Treebeard later warns about. Old Man Willow puts the Hobbits into a magical sleep in an effort to trap and kill them before Tom came along to the rescue. Tom retains his abilities from vanilla, but is appropriately more powerful and now comes with Old Man Willow to put all your nearby enemies to sleep, just like in the books. As you can see, putting the enemy to sleep can have some pretty hilarious effects, worth the price of admission alone. Tom is also a veritable base destroyer in his own right. If let be on his own, he can actually take out a fortress. I let him target this fortress after wiping out that army, so he only had so much time left, otherwise that thing would be gone. And yes, Tom Bombadil is a great hero killer in his own right, and this is apart from using his ability which keeps him immune to damage for 20 seconds. As you can see, this merry fellow is much more accurately represented in AOTR as the unstoppable power of nature he is in the books. The last feature of the faction worth highlighting is perhaps the most unusual unit of the entire game, and the only representation of the Greyhavens left from the mod's overhaul of the vanilla faction of the Elves, Círdan the Shipwright himself. A very mysterious figure from the books and the oldest elf remaining in Middle-earth, older still than even Galadriel, he is appropriately represented as having a beard, which only elves of extreme age can get. This is one of the deepest cuts from the source material I know of. As a far more peaceful and unwarlike figure at the end of the Third Age, as his title of Shipwright implies, he is responsible for crafting the elven ships which take the last elves to their mythical home of Valinor, west over sea, beyond the circles of the world. As such, in Age of the Ring, he is a highly unique upgrade at your fortress of a strictly defensive nature, not even really being able to be commanded out further than the fortress, always going back to it by default to guard that area. Reflecting his deep wisdom, he is one of the only units able to level up your heroes instantly, making him an invaluable addition to any Rivendell strategy. Overall, the faction of Rivendell feels in many ways the most familiar of the three Elven factions, while also being one of the most challenging factions to play and incorporating a ton of love from the source material to bring Middle-earth to life in some of the most compelling ways in terms of gameplay. Well, this about wraps up this video. In the next episode, we'll look at the last of the three Elven factions in AOTR, and easily the most unique, Lothlorien. Tons of great content to cover, so don't miss it. In the meantime, if you haven't already, why not download this amazing mod? It's fast, free, and easy. Download link is in the description, and I have a great installation guide on my channel here.